That's right, Illiterati might just be the only board game where a swear word might save your life and your mom's life at the same time. It's funky, it's fresh, depending on who you play it with, it's filthy. It is the winner of our first ever Jumble and Gaff Award for Best Board Game Title. That also happens to be a pun. It's Illiterati. And it's also bent on making you question your grasp of the English language and your sanity, and bears the distinction of being the only game that has successfully managed to wipe from my memory the name of everything that lives underwater. The Illiterati are coming, and they're committing some of the most egregious crimes against literature enacted since the burning of the library at Alexandria or the publication of Fourth Wing. And they're destroying every book they can lay their hands, claws, blowtorches, and mouths on? But these nefarious ne'er-do-wells are in for an ugly surprise, because there are at least 1 to 4 people out in the world who haven't switched over to reading on tablets and still care enough about books to join forces and put a stop to their crimes against chronicles, their violence against volumes, their perverse punishments of publications. And those 1 to 4 people are you and your friends. In this game, you and your friends must work together to repair the books that the Illiterati have destroyed by forming words out of letters that you are dealt. These words must capture the themes and narrative beats of the novels you are attempting to reconstruct. Find enough books, and you and your friends will unlock the ultimate challenge to your wordscaping abilities, the final chapter. Solve the final chapter, and congratulations, the future of literature has been saved. Your names will be on the lips of librarians the world over. Fail, and no one will be able to read Twilight again. Theme is what makes Illiterati exciting and breathes life into it that other word games lack. But it's also what makes Illiterati especially difficult, where a typical word game will give you points for spelling just any old coherent word that you'll find in the Scrabble dictionary. Illiterati requires players to concoct specific words that align with particular categories. Now, some of these categories are pretty normal and simple. They might ask you to spell colors or the names of countries or maybe your favorite dishes, and some of them are pretty tricky. They might ask you to come up with words that are a certain number of letters long, or maybe include particular letters. But others put you in the equivalent of a trap in one of the Saw movies by asking you to do things like create 2 words that are 5 letters long and are anagrams of each other. Like, what even is an anagram? What? A word, phrase, or name formed by rearranging the letters of another. Oh. It's like the Lord Voldemort thing. As if that wasn't hard enough, some of these letters have little symbols on them, and your book will require you to include a certain number of those symbols in the words that you make, and also you're being timed. Did I mention that? I didn't, but yeah, you've got 3 minutes to do all of this. 3 minutes is measured by this little timer, who I believe is a sympathizer to your cause, because this flow of sand will randomly stop going sometimes, and you guys will all be like working for several minutes, and someone will be like, did the timer run out yet? And then you look at it and you're like, oh, and you have to like flick it a little bit to keep the sand going. Out of ideas, or just unsure of how to organize this into 2 words that begin and end with the same letter? Well, don't worry, because at the beginning of each round, you'll be dealt a flock of fresh letters. Not to mention, all of the letters that are in front of your friends are accessible to you as well. Letters can be freely exchanged between players. But with these possibilities comes peril. If enough letters are left running amok when this timer runs out, one of them will be snapped up by the Illiterati and shelved permanently in that big library in the sky. Lose enough of these orphan letters and game over. You lose. You are not organizing glass dishes here in a cabinet in their most visually pleasing order. You are juggling them, and the game is throwing more at you while you're doing it. And for every one that you drop, you are one step closer to defeat. So with each letter added to your pool comes hope, the possibility of an avenue out of the corner you may feel like your book's objective has backed you into, but also responsibility. By the time the top half of the hourglass is empty, all of those letters must be snugly tucked into words, or they'll be caught out in the open by the hunters and, well, we've all seen Bambi. The game will also punish the group if any single player ends a round with more than 8 words in front of themselves. This nasty little rule forces players away from the safety of the shallows of 3-letter words, as the number of letters in play exponentially increases with every round, prodding them into the deep end of 4- and 5-letter terms. But that's not all, if you can believe it. I haven't even mentioned the true bugbears of this box, the Illiterati themselves. After the end of every 3-minute round, the Illiterati will fire up the engines of their maliciousness and wreak havoc on your words, slicing letters away from them. As the game continues, Illiterati attacks will grow increasingly sophisticated as they chain them together to visit devastation on the words that you and your teammates have cobbled together. Traditional word games can be frustrating for people who don't feel like they're very good at them, mostly because they favor people who can think fast on their feet or have larger vocabularies, or just those like half Bene Gesserit Jedi people who are able to look at a pile of letters and somehow immediately form them into words. Making the process of creating words cooperative completely shifts the dynamic of a word game. And as someone who is usually not very good at those kinds of games, I say it's all for the better. The person who would be your most intimidating opponent at the Scrabble table will transform in this game into a divine being, like Aang transforming into the Avatar state. They will save you from a grisly death time and time again, becoming a veritable Superman to your Lois Lane, or the script writers for Supernatural to your Sam and Dean Winchester. But since this is all timed and everyone is working toward disparate objectives, you will still have a role to play. You'll be bravely stitching together a 3-letter word every now and again, like Meriadoc Brandybuck stabbing the Witch King in the back of the knee while Éowyn finishes him off. Because in Illiterati, it is all hands on deck all the time until that hourglass is empty. It takes a village to win this game, and in a village, people adopt different roles. Funnily enough, from my experience, the roles people tend to fall into are not unlike the traditional roles you might find in a tabletop RPG. Some people become the tank, the one shouldering the brunt of the responsibility of word forging, while others are the DPS, maybe pumping out a 4-letter word here and there, but mostly putting together the little 3-letter words, the steady little damage per second that will slowly wear down the boss's health. And there's usually at least one person in the group who becomes the healer, who's just there to boost morale and self-esteem and offer some validation to people in between rounds to gear them up for another go at the final chapter. Not only is Illiterati a great game for people who aren't very good at word games but have friends who love them, and conversely, for people who are excellent at word games but have a bunch of friends who are sick and tired of losing to them, this is a game for the people who love to spell dirty words. I mean, we've all been there. We're 2 hours into a Scrabble game. We're trying to keep things interesting, so we put out a ribald little turn of phrase. All we get is a stinky side eye from our opponents. Well, you do that in Illiterati, and you'll have people thumping you on the back and shoving drinks into your hand because your little 4-letter shenanigans have saved the team. That's right. Illiterati might just be the only board game where a swear word might save your life and your mom's life at the same time. Its runtime is generally ideal as well. You bust this thing out, you'll usually be packing it up within the next 30 to 40 minutes. But sometimes your team draws into a final chapter that really throws everybody for a loop and you get bogged down for a couple of rounds, and that can be a little tiring as people run out of steam. In my experience, that happens in like a vanishing minority of games, but it did happen, so I wanted to mention it. Also, you need to know that this game has more puns in it than than an old porch in Texas has termites. And some of them are terrible. But you know, if you've got room in your home for a few sour puns, this won't be an issue. Just be aware that they inhabit this box. Overall, Illiterati is a sleek, modern take on the genre of word games, enlivened by an engaging theme. Pick it up, try it with your friends, see for yourself. And that is our review of Illiterati. Thanks again for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.